Is keeping track and flipping pages wearing you down? Wait, that's the last video. If you're a player, check it out. But for you GMs out there, do you also get tired of having to flip through all of our notes? Do you want to be able to keep up with your players' character sheets, pass notes, show handouts without running out of ink on your printer? Well, let me show you why I digitize all my games. A lot of people have gone from in-person games to virtual tabletops out of necessity. Most people consider a VTT just for that. I found, however, there are other ways to utilize a VTT along with my other personal digital apps, not just for my online play, but also for all of my in-person games as well. So I started playing with theater of the mind, drawing some simple sketches as needed on sheets of paper, and most of us have mats and use markers with tokens or coins or figures if you can manage. And if you want to get real fancy, building or buying 3D structures, a lot of them pre-made, I tend to differ my battle maps so much that though I have done some of this, it is way easier for me to use a digital map. But nowadays, I use that VTT for my maps, and it lets me reveal the maps easily. Using the program that I have, the characters can see whatever their characters can see. I get to add lighting effects. I can change scenes faster, no more erasing, making sure that I bring alcohol or have to worry about the mat being ruined by the wrong pins. And it's just made it super convenient. Now I have a table that I made for my at-home games. You can manage the same effect with cheap overhead projectors, or even some gaming shops may have a setup that you can use. I have a friend that had a TV with plexiglass on top of the screen, and the TV is boxed in. You can set it up, still use it as a TV, and they don't have to have as much of a space dedicated to it. I mean, most of your battle maps aren't too large anyway, really, but mine's just a full-size table. We use it, dinner, everything. I just put the wood back on top. Now, I know many can't do this, or it's too much of a hassle to. Maybe you're a purist, like one of my friends who loves the smell of markers and piece together paper maps. That's fine, but let me explain to you why I still keep all my games virtually. Now, as a player, I do this not only because most games I get to play in take place online, it also allows me to keep track of them or update them whenever and wherever I am. I can still have a sheet that I print out and slide in a protector for a game. But for Ultra Protection, there are a lot of us that just keep our character digitally. My players keep their characters digitally, and it allows me to look over a build that they have, keep tons of notes with that character or anything about that character with special weapons. And it allows me to have impromptu games, no matter where we are, even if we forget everything else. Having their character sheets digitally also keeps me from having to ask them for their last character sheet so I can plan the campaign ahead of time. It also allows me to pass things, or in rare occasions, place something on their character in their inventory without them even knowing it. And having a digital repository of characters, or the ability to create and house characters digitally, makes it so you can do impromptu games. And I've ran impromptu games using only our phones and some apps at parties and family get-togethers. Everyone has a phone nowadays with them at all times. So having access to character sheets and your resources to run games is a great thing, as we can use our phones to introduce people to our game and explain something about it to get them interested into the hobby. Also, being that everyone has their phone, being able to create a character on the fly and use that phone that they're used to look up and to try out making characters can be something that can really get them interested into our hobby. At-home games, even when I don't use a digital map, I will set up the game in my note-keeping app or my VTT. This allows me to keep a copy of any special items. It allows me to keep monsters organized and grouped together for encounters. It helps me to keep everything in one place that I can easily reference, and I don't have to run around looking for stats or go through binders. A lot of people like to use music for combat or ambiance, and a VTT helps with organizing that as well. I also use a VTT to help keep track of combat. I tie in battle into my music, and on my table, since it's digital, I display the turn order and it rotates as we go through combat. Editing from your phone is not the only thing. While for the most part we use real dice in person, I have used real dice virtual games as well. At high level play, a virtual character sheet can come in real handy. I have taken Pathfinder 1E games to level 20. Doing so opens up, depending on builds, a lot of rolls. My wife had a monk that on a good turn could roll 145 dice. While we tried to do this in person a few times, we eventually succeeded and allowed her to roll on roll 20. And it's not just with Pathfinder settings. I have seen this mid-level games for 5e as well. A mid-level Sorlock, rolling advantage on every attack, making 6 attacks in a turn with d6s, d4s, d10s for damage dice, adding their stats, other bonuses to hit on top of it can be too much for some people after a long day. And as a GM, we don't have one character. We have every other character. Multiple attacks and special abilities, having things digitized can just make it easier. And I find that in large encounters, having a VTT will help as I can roll fast, describe the situation as it happens. I find that during these large or complex encounters, the faster I am at describing the situation, instead of rolling dice and doing the math, the more interested my players remain. And keeping them invested should be one of our main goals. Although attack rolls, my players usually like me to still roll on the table when I can. So, what programs do I use as a GM? We are a far cry from the world where I grew up. Multiple notebooks and a binder devoted just for planning and running my games. We can keep everything in the palm of our hands with way more efficiency. I'm not going to go over, nor do I promote, using things like Excel or Word anymore as a GM, mostly because there's better things out there. I used to use note-keeping apps like Evernote for a while, and it was great for organizing my games and making spare characters. Now I use a blend of my VTT programs and Notion. Notion I've used for a few years now. There are several programs that are like Notion out there. Pick your poison. Notion is just a thing that I am used to, and in fact, I have some Notion templates that I created for GMs and players alike for Pathfinder 1E as well as 5e D&D, and it's what I run my campaign from. One template even allows you to don and doff armor as a player. Equipment changes the sum of whatever stat column it is. That one was done at my wife's request, so if you happen to use it, you can thank her. These templates also help you organize your game by giving you a chance to create locations, organizations, monsters, and by using Notion, I can link them with notes to previously created notes or pages or characters or campaigns, external links, embedding videos and documents. Most templates I or other people have are free and can easily be used by you and the rest of your party. Now, for some non-shameless plugs, Roll20 is a good standby, and one that I really recommend for people looking to get into a virtual helper and want to have digital character sheets, or if they're new and they want to have something free to help them build a character. It also is a great way to have a character in a game that may or may not have to go all digital at some times. Bad weather, on a business trip, on a vacation, and you don't want to miss your game? Well, there you go. Now, I used Roll20 for years, and I still play with some people that do, but I prefer Foundry. Now, to let you know, I use Foundry because I use it to run my online games. I also use it as a digital map due to its features for my at-home games on my table, which means I purchased it to begin with, and any games that my players have with me on it, they have access to their character sheets for that game, whether we're in person or if it's my online crew. The bad thing about it is if your players have a character sheet they use in the game with you, they will not have access to it if you happen to be running or have another game pulled up. So for most people, unless you also run your games and own a Foundry account or play with other people that you run your games in Foundry online, I just recommend Roll20. Like I mentioned, I use my VTT to hold the tokens of monsters for adventures I'm running, either keeping them in the room or for the dungeon that I'm running, or just off to the side, just like for random encounters. But VTTs like Foundry and Roll20 both have compendiums, so you can look up a monster, plop it down like you would if you were running a game online with the rest of your guys. It's an easy way to pull over and you can see the stats, and now you're not going to have one more thing for your encounter that you have to look at. You have 3 different monsters that you happen just to create this wild encounter for. Well, now all 3 of them are in the same location. You have access to all of their attacks and everything with a click of a button. You don't have to flick between pages or tabs. It makes it real easy. This also means that you can roll inside the game if you really need to, or at least just have it there for easy references like I do, like I said. I use it to keep track of conditions on monsters as well. They come in with built-in notes if you change between some of the editions, like I do with 5e and Pathfinder. So that way, even if you kind of forget what some of these rare curses or conditions are, whenever they're clicked on, they're automatically there, and I don't have to worry about having to pull up a tab and look for my other notes for whatever that is if my player doesn't know it themselves. The notes and handouts can be used with great efficiency as well, and it's probably one of my favorite things about using VTTs with my players, because everyone has access to that virtual game. You can share and give ownership to your players' notes, images, NPCs, and items. Being able to not only show them to your players, but to make it so they always have access to it, not only helps the players who maybe aren't good at keeping notes, but as a GM, it's kind of a dream. Being able to know when you give them something that's in the story, you can actually see that the players have been given the information that they need, and they have constant access to this. I have done this with great extent in my campaign right now with letters and notes and ledgers that each of my players have access to. So when something comes up, I know they can look at their journals instead of players having missing notes, or maybe they don't take great notes. I know that I can give them something that they remember reading, and now they can go find it. And I don't have to worry about them losing it for the game. They always have access to it. I have done some split games where tokens and players and monsters have been on my game-in table all together. The players could move their characters, and having been best used when there's added lighting effects, like they're trying to infiltrate and I can move a character around and his vision is based on the torch, so the characters get to see the light move around the map. That way they can sneak in the darkness. It's probably been the best use of that, but most of my in-person games, we just use painted tokens, really. It makes more work for me, but my guys like it. Now, around my tables, we allow phones and laptops, of course, though I can see some groups that this is not a good idea. I do this not only so my players can digitize their sheets, but because it makes it easier to either pass notes, sim them special magical items, something they heard that no one else did, so they can RP it out, certain memories the characters might have. And the other characters are oblivious until they decide to reveal and create this moment in the game. Now, I'm not downing people for whichever way they want to play, just giving some reasons and ideas to make our lives easier in a 21st century digital high-paced world. If you haven't given any merit to these ideas or a VTT before, I say give it a try. Take what you like, leave the rest. I just hope that I have helped you find something to make running your games easier and more enjoyable. But if you want to escape all the noise of the modern day, maybe you want to relax and step back to nostalgia, well, dim the lights, dust off the old GM guide, rip out some character sheets, and roll some dice. If you like this video, check out my others. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. If you have any tips or requests, drop them in the comments below. And until next time, may your crits be epic, your adventures legendary, and your gaming table filled with laughter.